Catch, how you been, my friend?
I keep working over. Yeah, 5 weeks in. It's like, so every time you think you have caught up, you have reached out to everybody, and you're like, no, I. Because it is so much. Like there's 10 more emails that we put on.
Well, hey, you're in good company, my friend.
Oh, yeah, no, good afternoon. We have both our chair and vice chair are not here. And so I've requested Brentley to do the magnificent job that we did earlier, 2-3 months ago, and conduct the meeting for us.
Well, thankfully, this is a pretty forgiving group, so if I have something, yeah, so I guess it is 2:06, we'll call the meeting to order. I do see some new faces, we want to run through introductions real quick, just for those that are here, so start there, I guess.
Arthur Chambers, Wakeland MPO plan.
Laura Roy, MPO. Suzette May of Mobilize Waco.
Meg Wallace with Mobilize Waco.
Alfred Solano, work with Waco's name.
Laura Wagstaff, Money Manager, Waco.
Serena Stevenson, Waco Transit System.
Mukesh Kumar, Wakeman, yeah.
I'm Sammy, I'm the assistant data engineer for Waco.
Wait, Zach, text on Waco. And Burton Lane, planning and programming and text on Waco.
Daniel Davis, Bilingual Education Specialist, Waco MPO. Morning, David, Waco Trip.
True. Hello, everyone, Brendan Wheeler with the North Central Texas Council Bill.
Excellent. All right. So you indicated there's no need to check quorum, so I guess we're good on that.
Yes.
Item number 1 is presentation and discussion regarding Hyperloop high-speed transportation technology that is currently being studied by the North Texas Council.
I wanted to introduce you all to Brendan, who has kindly agreed to present on this discussion item that we had last time. And the TAC and the policy board had requested that we have them come and do a presentation on that. And so he has tons of information, but we requested him to walk us through the entire process and also what it is, what the ask is. And so with that,
should I do it from here or?
Yeah.
This is good. Here it is. All of you.
Thank y'all for having me. I'll do a quick presentation, and if there's time for questions, happy to take questions. This is on the heels of a study called the Fort Worth to Laredo High-Speed Transportation Study. Some of you may be familiar with it. This study was completed back in 2020. And since that time, we've received some interest from a Hyperloop company provided by the name of Transpod, a Canadian company that wishes to take this to the next level. So with that, we'll get into the presentation. So these are the MPOs that have been a part of the original study back in 2020, including this MPO here at Waco. So let me back up a step. Fort Worth did a passenger rail study and excuse me, I say Fort Worth, TxDOT did a passenger rail study in combination with Oklahoma called the Texas-Oklahoma Passenger Rail Study just 5-6 years ago, and really looked at passenger rail on 35 corridor, all the way from Laredo through San Antonio, Austin, Waco, Fort Worth, all the way up into Oklahoma. In that study, high-speed rail was one of the modes that they looked at, including conventional passenger rail and some other modes. What we decided as MPOs was to take that study a step further with this Fort Worth Laredo high-speed study and look at other potential modes. If we're going to be investing in a technology that's going to last the test of time, 7,500 years, we want to make sure we're looking at technologies that were coming out and available like maglev and Hyperloop. This coalition of MPOs did this study looking at these other modes and other corridors connecting these various cities within Texas that you can see here on the map. And then there were some recommendations from that study. So you go to the next slide. Here's what the study found is connecting all the city pairs was advantageous. They were looking as part of the study, they were looking are there specific cities you want to connect, other cities that if you connect too many cities, like what Amtrak does with passenger rail, it really slows down the trip. So that's not the purpose. This is the purpose is to be high speed. But what the study found is connecting all these major cities, Fort Worth, Waco, Temple, Killeen, Austin, San Antonio, to Laredo, is advantageous, and you're able to maintain those high speeds, whether it's Hyperloop, maglev, or high-speed rail. But Hyperloop did come out on top. It's as far as the study is concerned, it has the fastest speeds, and the characteristics of the mode differ enough from high-speed rail and maglev that make it even more advantageous from a ridership standpoint. You can see generally the corridor that they follow here between Fort Worth and Waco is more or less following a utility corridor. Somewhere between Waco, Temple, the transitions to near the 35 corridor, and then between San Antonio and Laredo. So again, very high level, nothing's been designated yet, but this is a study to, like I said, build on the original TxDOT study. And in order to advance this, it needs to have TxDOT again interested to look at more project level type of analysis. So we go to the next slide. So that's where the study ended in 2020. And I'll say this before I get into this next slide. COG, as well as all the other MPOs, Waco and all the other ones down the line, tried to take this to TxDOT and the Transportation Commission back in 2020. But as many of y'all know, 2020 held other plans in store for us, and COVID became a higher priority than the results of the study. So it kind of sat on a shelf. But since that point in time, we believe this is the time to revive that, the results of that study with the Transportation Commission. And this is part of why. During the years of COVID and then afterwards, the Regional Transportation Council in Dallas-Fort Worth, our policy board, is very interested in advancing technology. So hearing from companies like Hyperloop companies, Transpod is shown here, as well as other technologies, JPods and Swift. Those are not Hyperloop companies, but they're newer capital-intensive technologies that require certification before they can actually be built. And for all of these new technologies in the transportation field, they require capital-intensive certification centers to be built for entities to be able to certify them for public use. So instead of them building it somewhere in the desert like Vegas, which is what Virgin Hyperloop did with their initial Hyperloop segment, Dallas-Fort Worth is saying, why don't y'all build it somewhere in the Metroplex, and we can certify your technology here, and then you can convert your facility into revenue operations. It's not a throwaway facility, it's not a throwaway capital investment. You're able to convert it to revenue use once it's certified. That's the concept behind the CERT program, and that's how Transpod approach Dallas-Fort Worth region with their interest. But obviously with Hyperloop, you can't just build a 10 to 50 mile section and actually gain revenue out of that system. It's intended to be an inner city type system. So that's really what caused us to step back into this Fort Worth Laredo study and say, is there something here that maybe Transpod's interested in a feasibility study for the entire Fort Worth Laredo? Which leads us to Transpod pitch. If you go to the next slide. Transpod, just to give you a quick overview of their company, they're a Canadian company. And what Hyperloop is, for those that may know, it's basically every Hyperloop company is doing it different. So whatever you've read online, some are doing it that way, some are doing it different ways. Theirs is a low pressure tube. I don't even think they call it near vacuum. It's just a low pressure tube where they use magnetic levitation. So if you take the progression of high-speed rail, steel wheels on steel rail, it can travel up to 200 something miles an hour. You use magnetic levitation to reduce the friction, remove the friction from the wheels of the rail. maglev trains can travel 300+ miles an hour. Hyperloop does the same concept, but it removes air resistance by introducing a low pressure tube. So these pods are able to travel about 650 miles an hour, which is about the same speed as the airliner in flight. So as you can imagine, these have to be fairly straight tubes to achieve those speeds. They can also slow down and move around in urban areas as needed. But that's the concept behind Hyperloop. So Transpod, as I mentioned, is a Canadian company looking to advance their technology in Canada. And they're actually already in the process of building their first segment. Excuse me, I believe they reached financial close on their first segment, which is a similar process that they would recommend in the US, where they build a 10 to 50 mile certification segment between, say, their airport in one city to the downtown, and then extend that once that became certified to the next city down the line. They're looking at doing this between Calgary and Edmonton, the Alberta province. So on the next slide, here's a little bit more about what these pods look like and how the technology works. I'm not an expert on Hyperloop, so unfortunately the Transpod rep was not able to make a meeting here today, so you'll have to bear with me on some of these details. But the concept is they use these pads at the ends of the pod that allow it to levitate within the pod using, as I mentioned, magnetic levitation technology. They use linear induction motors to propel the vehicle forward, and they access power, which is fully electric, through the system through a plasma arc, basically kind of like a bird rail you have on a streetcar or a light rail line, except they would use a plasma arc to connect that to the vehicle. Power to the vehicle. The next slide, you see kind of what a potential station looks like. So again, they're in this low pressure tube. It's hard to see from here, but the concept is they can even have power provided to the facilities through solar panels. That's what kind of the darker tops of the tube is to the left there. And then as it approaches the station, it would go through an airlock. So you go from low pressure to atmospheric pressure, and then approach the station in that manner. Next slide. So their proposal is to do a feasibility study between DFW through basically along the 35 corridor, through Waco, Clean Temple, Austin, San Antonio, all the way down to Laredo. They would start out in the short term looking for where is the best place to build this certification facility. Again, they're not intending to build, they need to build 10 to 50 miles to be able to prove their vehicle can get up to speed and then stop for FRA, which is the Federal Railroad Administration, would be the oversight agency, just like they are for railroads, for them to be able to understand the mechanics, the build standards around this technology. So Transpod will be looking to build their 10 to 50 mile facility somewhere in this alignment in the short term. And then in the medium term, they would build out the full system for their first corridor, first intercity corridor that you can see here. In a long term, eventually connect maybe other parts of the Texas Triangle on into Mexico to Monterrey, and then maybe even north into Oklahoma and beyond. Next slide. I kind of went through a lot of the feasibility items here, but just really what Transpod is looking to do is take a high look at our study and decide, does the potential corridors identified in the study work for their technology? They would work with the cities, communities along the corridor to make sure that they're looking at something that's feasible and understanding the community needs. Where would stations be within those communities? Would they be on the outskirts? Would they be in the center? How do you access those? They would look at financial viability from their perspective, because again, they're a private provider and they're looking to actually make money. But the good news is they would actually be bringing money to the table to actually build this facility. One thing I haven't mentioned, I've talked mostly about people movement, but Hyperloop is also advantageous for goods as well. And frankly, that's probably what would make the system financially viable on the front end, is the goods piece, especially if you're connecting down into Mexico. So they'll be in their feasibility study, they'll be taking a high level look at all these items and then deciding if this makes sense for them and then look at next steps. So through this process, you know, like I said, working with local governments on their preferences and standards and what the public is looking for, and try and figure out the cost of the project to move forward. Their feasibility timeline is 6 to 9 months, and they will include a contingency that should this not work out, that perhaps the boat can be converted from hyperloop to high-speed rail, because they share a lot of similarities as far as. So next one. So here's my final slide. I have a few other slides just for information that I'll leave with y'all if you're interested. But summing up the original study and this new interest from Transpod. As I mentioned, all the MPOs involved here on this 35 corridor tried to approach the Transportation Commission with the results of the study back in 2020. We are again reviving that interest, and we've held a meeting with all the MPO directors, including Mukesh here in Waco, on what is the interest in your area and moving forward with the results of the study, as well as with the potential feasibility study by Transpod. And we actually, COG did send a letter to TxDOT back in August, about 2 months ago, wishing to approach the commission to say, hey, look, if Transpod is putting all their money in on this first step to do this feasibility study, will the state support it, or at least not, or at least wait to see what the results of the study are to see if it's viable. So we'll keep you updated as we hear more from the state, and Mukesh and others from Waco were included on that letter as well, so you should receive notice. So some of the questions and considerations just want to leave y'all with. One is Waco MPO interested in pursuing this further? If so, do you have any questions for COG or for Transpod? Also, is Waco interested in being considered by Transpod for this initial certification center, 10 to 50 mile length? It's not they can build it wherever they'd like to on the corridor, but I'm sure they'd like to build it where they're wanted, right? So that was part of what started Transpod's interest in getting this study started. And finally, if this does move forward, would you consider being able to provide data and support for Transpod as they go through their feasibility study? Should this move? So I'll leave it there. Happy to take questions.
Two things.
Yeah.
I'll just put it both out there. It seems like this would be very energy efficient compared to trucking or air travel. And two, is this potential options for we've got the airport problem. Or,
Sure.
having to travel 2 hours if you want to get a flight that's not going to get canceled. So just how those two things fit in.
Absolutely. No, great questions. So since I'm not a member of Transpod, I didn't really highlight the green aspect of Transpod, but yes, you're absolutely right. They are very energy efficient considering the amount of people or goods they would move, with the amount of energy they require for the system. As I mentioned, they are planning to include something similar to, or including exactly solar panels on top to supplement some of their energy needs. They may need other energy needs, but this would at least supplement the requirements of the system. Additionally, to your second point, well, I forgot to say.
Oh, just the issue with the airport. It's hard to fly out right now.
Right, sure,
So
sure. And this helps to fill the niche between air travel distances that are economically viable and distances that you like to drive. Similar to high-speed rail, Hyperloop, they fill this niche in between where it's very inefficient to fly from DFW to Austin, or Dallas Fort Worth to Houston or something to that effect. But it's also a lot to drive, and it's getting worse and worse every day. Even though 35, 45 being expanded, they'll continue to be so, and they'll continue to be congested. From that standpoint, these fill that niche where one thing I haven't mentioned about Hyperloop is what's different than high-speed rail. High-speed rail, the train stops at every station. Once you have an express track, it stops at every station. Hyperloop is much more like a smart elevator type system where, say you get on in Waco, which you go to San Antonio, you'd be directed to the pod that's going straight through. You don't have to stop at all the other stations. So it's more of a conceived as an on-demand type system where you're able to travel from door to door without having to go through the other stations. So depending on the communities and where the station will be located, again, these are likely going to be large terminals similar to a small airport from a station standpoint. So depending on where you're wishing to locate those and how you have access to the community from those stations, those will be each community along the board. We're having to decide that whether you're willing to pay a little more to see, can we tunnel this? Can we get this to a central location where people can use it from a downtown standpoint or a transit center standpoint? Or, based on potential impacts, do we want to stick it out on the nether regions of the area, force people to drive it, right? So those are the discussions between the community.
Yes. 6 to 9 month feasibility study, is that something that y'all are starting now, or are you waiting until that commission meeting to start that? What's the timeline for that study?
Sure. So that the initiation of that study is really when Transpod wishes to do it. And they're not wishing to start it if they don't feel they have a potential path forward following feasibility study. So if TxDOT says, look, we're not interested, but try this somewhere else, then they're not interested in spending all the money on feasibility studies. So they're really waiting to see, hey, look, we're not looking for TxDOT for any handouts. We're not looking for TxDOT to pay anything. We just want TxDOT to be a partner that's willing and interested in, if this moves forward, let's have discussions and see what.
So that said, the right of way for land that would be built in the 15-mile stretch, is that, and maybe too early to know this, but I saw a utility corridor and I saw I-35. Are they looking at acquiring new right of way for this? And if so, how does that process look? Or right now, are they trying to capitalize on existing set aside public use, either for utility or road?
I can't speak to Transpod specifically. I can speak to, at least from the results of the study, the intent was to follow existing corridors as much as possible. So there may be a need to expand those existing corridors, but following an already impacted corridor, not creating a new one. I say creating a new one between San Antonio and Laredo. We showed Greenfield to see the options because that's a straighter shot. But for most of the corridor, the intent is to follow existing rights of way as much as possible and perhaps use those rights of way. So that would be a discussion of whoever owns a right of way, like the TxDOT, or if it's a utility corridor, whoever owns that right of way, if they're willing to work out a deal. That looks like. I know between Fort Worth and Dallas, DOG is doing a high-speed study there. We looked at Hyperloop, we looked at Maglev. We ended up with high-speed rail. And between Fort Worth and Arlington, TxDOT is looking to reconstruct I-30. And going through the study right now on what that looks like. And we're working closely with them to see if we can co-locate this high-speed rail corridor within the highway footprint and actually pushing the main lines out and having the high-speed rail corridor at the center.
Because I would imagine the footprint itself of the facility is not that much, right? There's probably some columns with an elevated too.
That's right. Either columns, I know in Fort Worth between along I-30, it's in a trench, but it could be in column, it could be on columns, and the mainlands could be brought together. So depending on the needs of the corridor and how expensive right of way impacts those kind of things, those discussions will be had. Obviously, it's more expensive to be elevated, but you're able to control more structure than you do on the ground. I would say generally from our study, again, forward to Dallas, I can't speak to Transpod's right of way. You're looking at 75 to 100 feet. Depending on the kind of access road.
And that probably goes into the environmental right. So you said it's relevant.
I just can't let go of this question. So for this to work, you're not just gonna have one in each direction. So do they go wide or they go tall? Like, are they stacked on top of each other?
Well, I would say they're incredibly efficient, and you can actually have pods one behind the other just mere seconds. So if they're traveling at 650 miles an hour and you have mere seconds between pods, because it's automatically controlled, you have a lot of capacity. So 2 tubes, one in each direction, will suffice for most areas. When you come to stations and those kind of things, you will have parallel tubes. They'll be kind of the off ramps.
So you would,
Lower
the
speed.
picture in your mind should be like a railroad.
Very much like a railroad, and then kind of like freeway off ramps as you get closer to the city.
Thanks for satisfying. Just trying.
It's not gonna have the track issues like the dispatcher where you have to do tracking. This one has tracking time, so this one has to wait on, so you're not gonna have that. It eliminates all of that.
That's right. I mean, they'll have their own dispatching, so they're going to control what's in the pods and how frequent they are. And this one gets priority, this one's got to wait, those kind of things.
But with those 2 pods, you want both directions, that eliminates a lot of Amtrak's issues.
That's right. You won't have any single track where this one has to go, we got to wait. Yeah, yeah, because that will create a safety issue if there's ever an issue. 600 miles an hour. It's gonna be- Yeah, two separate pods, one direction.
Amtrak.
There's a yes though right there.
I have to write it, but I have to depend on it because I can't just drive somewhere and I have to use other means of transportation. So it's irritating that I use Amtrak and I don't get to San Antonio until 11 o'clock at night
Sure.
in the middle of the city and I'm having to live,
Sure.
you know. So that's it's very clean.
Absolutely.
Well, we had, so the next steps for the MPO is that we will have the same presentation to the policy board at the next meeting. And then at the next TAC meeting, we will have a formal vote from you to recommend to the policy board that they pass a resolution or reconsider whichever your recommendation is going to be. Thank you.
Thank you.
So with that, we'll move on to item 2, is a review and discussion item regarding the public agency listening session scheduled for tomorrow.
So let's go to the next. So as we have brought up before, we are in the process of preparing our 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan. And the first stage of that was to engage in significant amount of brainstorming from January through May, which we completed, and we defined the scope and the approach of our MTP. That's in your agenda packet, and we also emailed that document to all of us so that we are all on the same page. What exactly are we expecting from our MTP beyond what the federal requirements are? And so the next step in the process is to organize a public agency listening session. And the reason why we're doing this is because this MTP is going to have a regional vision statement that would drive how we select project, why we project them, how do we prioritize them and such. Public agency listening session, can you move to the same next slide, please? So the idea is to gain knowledge from local agencies. And so we have invited water management, watershed management entities, utilities, housing, public health, education, and business. And the idea is that these are all agencies whose work is affected by what we do, and in turn, our work should be affected by everything that these agencies do. So that's the reason why we have organized this meeting for tomorrow. And what we will do with their input is they combine all of this as these are the ways that we think housing, utilities, watershed management, they all end up affecting mobility planning in the region, and we'll present it to the policy board during their regional visioning workshop 2 weeks from today. And with that, this will inform them about what some of the other criteria are, because I've heard several people actually refer to me. I've been introduced by some people saying that this is Mukesh, he does transportation planning. And reality is that transportation is just one side of mobility planning that we create in. And so we thought that it is crucially important that we directly reflect everything from public health, watershed management and such, because our cities are going to, if ever we were to have a calamity, it's probably not going to happen because we had congestion. It's probably going to happen because we just ran out of water. Or it will probably happen because our public health concerns, air quality got so bad that it was utterly unlivable, or housing became so expensive that it was just impossible to attract anybody for it. And so it's important that we think about these in a larger context, and that's what we are doing. Next slide, please. And so this is, I wanted to give you a very brief summary of what we put out in the scope and approach document, that we are planning for an equitable and McLean County. And what we also want to do is make sure that everybody likes to make statement that you want to put people, we're people centric, we prioritize people over everything, but then you ask them for the next step. So what exactly are you doing? We do everything that we do typically for a talk. And so that's typically and something our approach. We wanted to test out that what should our plans actually look like if we are making that claim that we want people together, people in that. At the same time, future technology, including Hyperloop or any such fast-moving stuff, we need to be preparing for it. And so we want to make sure that our next MTP reflects that. And at the same time, we also want to reevaluate how we consider which projects have more impact on the region and less, so that we're not only responding to the federal requirement, we're also doing what the regional priorities. And so now that's the approach that we are taking. The scope is on the top, and the bottom is the approach we are taking. And based on that, next slide, please. This is roughly how we had organized it. It's a very small. I didn't want to go through all of this, but it will be a 2-hour session tomorrow, and at least some of you, if you like and you have time, please come. We'll serve you lunch. So from 12 to 2, we are meeting tomorrow, and where these organizations will be presenting. We'll discuss why we do this, why is it important for these agencies to actually be part of the long-range transportation planning process. Any question related to public agency listening session or thoughts that we should incorporate into our discussion? It's going to be a 2-hour session. We'll have 1 hour of lunch in which we'll also present what MPO does and why our work is important to them. And then we'll have 1 hour of discussion organized around the ideas. We'll discuss how affordability of housing, how natural resource management, these all end up being intertwined with mobility at tomorrow's meeting.
Where again is it? Where is it at?
In the main conference.
Big conference.
Yes. Now, you all were here. You all are going to be part of the regional visioning workshop. And and that's one reason why we decided not to invite you separately for this meeting, because whatever we listen from here is going to be presented to the regional visioning workshop, to which each one of you sitting here. You're not just invited, you're expected to be there. And that's on October 19th, and that will begin at 11 o'clock. And at that time, you will receive a formal invitation for that. On that day, the way we have organized it, we'll begin at 11 o'clock, we'll have 1 hour session, followed by a lunch hour, and then we'll have breakout sessions. And then we'll, that same day, we will be taking the hour straight. Okay. And right after that, we'll have a statement for the regional visioning statement that the policy board will adopt. And that will drive our prioritization and evaluation criteria for projects in MTP. So you have 2 opportunities. You can either come tomorrow if you would like to, or you can come to be part of the regional visioning workshop, which in fact, I insist that you do come to that one. Tomorrow is actually more optional. But for the regional visioning workshop, because based on your ideas, we'll be crafting the vision statement right on the spot. Any question about tomorrow or any suggestion? Or anybody we missed out, any public agency that we have not included yet?
Of course, we're just concerned that disability concerns are represented as well. Just hearing about this.
Yeah, so, well, so we had actually several such issues, and so one of the things we decided was, who are the people who are not included in our work groups? Because see, everybody who is part of the work group, we participate on a regular basis. So you're already part of it. And so that's one reason why these are agencies, you notice all the names there. They're not part of any of our work group. They're not part of the technical advisory committee. In fact, just to give you another quick example, Laura does, her work is directly linked with what we do, but we did not invite her either because that's part of the task. So
Oh, like, where is it?
yes,
Okay.
exactly. That's the reason why these are housing, for instance, or natural resources. These are typically not the agencies that we consider when we are thinking about our planning process.
And that's gonna be a 2-hour meeting. Besides how long?
Tomorrow we will meet for 2 hours.
The 19th.
19th will begin at 11 o'clock and it will end at 2 o'clock. And after that, we'll go straight into the policy board. And that will be a fairly good sized meeting. It will have all the policy board, all the TAC members, several of the work group members, and plus we have invited the policy board members to bring one of their advisors with them.
Any other questions on the listening session? Good discussion. Item number 3 is actually about the regional visioning workshop.
So I'll just mention one quick thing here. Let's move forward. And so that's the goal, that we need to have a shared vision. And just to give you a little bit of background, initially when we started thinking about defining our regional vision for our metropolitan transportation plan, first we thought that it should really be a very detailed, public facing. But we figured that we are not an elected body, and our policy board is representative of all the political entities in Metropolitan County. And so it is really useful for them to come to an agreement to what the regional vision needs to look like, rather than us from the staff point of view to try to figure out what that vision needs to be. And that's the reason why we switched it, and so that and that's the reason why we formatted it the way we did. Next slide. And so the question for us is that are there items, themes, issues, concerns that we should discuss? What strategies do we need for ascertain their desires and values? And how should the regional transportation plan adjust to communities' expected challenges? So what we have done is that we have listed a bunch of items on this survey. What I would like you to do is go ahead and just rank them in priorities. And once you do that, what we'll do is that for the regional visioning workshop, we'll organize the breakout sessions and the very specific topics of discussion that we need to do. We'll prioritize the items that you list as more important and deprioritize the items that you list as less important. It's just a lot of items there, but you should be able to prioritize them from 1 through 5 fairly quickly.
Does everybody have
If you need a pen, great. Yes, absolutely. Next slide. While you're filling all this out, part of the business section is going to be that we'll be presenting an analysis of all the available data that we have, and Arthur has been putting together a significant amount of work on not only crash data, but also based on our travel demand model. We also just completed a shift share model that we're trying to finalize. And at the same time, we'll be providing all the information related to what the federal requirements related to safety, infrastructure condition, reliability, and such are. Next slide. These are the planning emphasis areas that we will be discussing at the regional visioning presentation. These are the areas that are part of the planning emphasis area as part of the Infrastructure and Jobs Act. And that's transition to clean energy, equity, justice, complete streets, public involvement, strategic highway network, land management, agency coordination, planning and environment linkages, and the data and transportation planning. Next slide. So the idea behind all of this is that our infrastructure planning and vision making process needs to emphasize safety. It needs to address climate change. It also needs to minimize the impact on human and natural resources. Equity and justice and accommodation of inclusive approaches is important. And also prioritizing based on national civil defense, as well as travel and federally managed plans. And finally, there is renewed emphasis on data usage in our transportation planning process, which we are incorporating in several different ways. Next slide, please. Just to give you a snapshot of what you should be expecting, these are some of the projections that we have from our travel demand model. We are expected to have about 313,000 people in Western County by 2050. And one of the things that we realized was that we have been having difficulty keeping our graduates. Now, one of the challenges is that we lose more graduate students or graduates than we gain. And now part of it is because since Baylor has a large number of students who graduate, our economy can't accommodate all of them, and so they do leave. And that's one reason why we see a relatively negative total number of graduates coming in and total number of graduates leaving out. Part of it is because we are still primarily a university town. But at the same time, we noticed that compared to other Texas cities, we dropped. We used to be 23 in terms of the percentage of population that had postgraduate degree. We were 9%. We're down to 8.2%. And that is clearly something important that we need to be addressing. Next slide. Total employment changes, we are expecting 25,000 additional jobs. And that's broken down into basic and retail from 11 and 4,000. Service employment changes at 9,000 and education-related employment changes up to almost 9,000 people by 2015. Another major, next slide, please. Another major concern we are going to present at is that our average median income, and these are nominal dollars. What that means is that in the base year of 2015, our average income was 42,000. Now we're expecting it to decline to 44,000. It looks like a large number, but these are nominal numbers. Adjusted for inflation, this number is actually lower. And so we're expected to get poorer over 2050 based on the last 15 years worth of data. So we'll be presenting this as well about what kind of mobility system we need so that we can address some of these concerns, at least indirectly. Last item about housing affordability. In 2015, the median median house value was 124,000. In 2022, it jumped almost 100% to 233,000. And obviously, our median income has not gone up. Actually, our median income has remained fairly stagnant, but our housing prices on average have doubled. And so this is another major point of concern that we need to be highlighting and realizing how we can address some of this through our mobility systems. Next slide. We are expected to have 113,000 new households. I'm sorry, I apologize. 27,000 new households for a total of 113,000 for almost 300,000 people. Next slide. Based on this is another important point for us to note that if you notice in this slide, almost everything is moving toward McGregor and China Springs. Based on where this map is showing you where the expected growth by 2050 is. This presents a major point of departure for us because this is also the portion where a lot of our water resources are located. And so if there is renewed emphasis on development in that part of the county, what it means is that we need to seriously consider its impact on water, housing, emissions, health outcomes, traffic patterns. Next slide, please. In terms of daily trip generation, this is another point of concern. We notice that our trip generation is typically so spread out, which is very typical of sprawling communities throughout the country. And what that means is that more sprawled out trip generation often looks like we are going to be increasing our commute time as well as distance that we commute. And so if we set our targets at reduction in transportation emission, or reduction in VMT, this is not the kind of pattern we would like to see. We would like to see a pattern in which trip generation is not as sprawled out as it appears to be here. Next slide, please. And so some of the questions for you here is, I just give you a snapshot of what we are working on about how we plan to conduct this workshop, and also some of the data that we would be presenting. And also we have been trying to define some of the questions related to public agency outcomes. One of the items that we just presented at the annual MPO meeting conference was that we need to be thinking a lot more about the integrated mobility spaces. So quite often it's insufficient to simply talk about accessible mobility. So we want to move here and step forward because accessible mobility, regardless of physical ability and such, you can make accessible mobility, but you still have somewhere to go. And wherever you're going is inaccessible. What's the point of these mobility systems? And so we really need to be thinking more about integrated mobility spaces rather than simply only about accessible mobility. Accessible mobility is obviously important, but we need to take the step beyond that and not to stop at accessible mobility. And so our steps are to craft the regional vision, and all of you, again, if I've not said it enough, I insist you are expected to be there at 11 o'clock, October 29th. It will be at Southwest Communities. Sorry.
19.
October 19th, sorry. Thank you very much. Yes. October 19th, 11 to 2 p.m. at the South Waco Community Center. That's where our policy board meeting is. And please, please, please make room on your calendar to be there. And again, we'll have lunch for this event as well. Actually, we are hoping that Yaki will just bring their food truck for us, because we'll have plenty of people there.
Any discussion or questions about the regional visioning workshop? I take it we need our questionnaire starts or this is over.
Yes.
I don't think so.
We will share the findings of what you're doing also with the policy board and actually organize a business session before this.
All right, so we'll move to item 4, presentation and discussion regarding efforts of Mobilize Waco to raise awareness of pedestrian accessibility issues both locally and statewide.
So I just wanted to mention that both Meg and Suzette have been integral part of Bike Ped work group, and in the process, we have had several successes. Right now, I would still call them small successes. I would not call them big ones, but compared to how things have been for the last 2 decades, they may look like big successes. But we need to go further, and in that, when Suzette had reached out to Annette and said that this is what they're doing, we were super excited about it. So we can't wait to see the outcome of this project that's Megan doing.
Okay, I'm Suzette May. This is Fred, and down. Good boy. We are part of Mobilize Waco. We're a disability accessibility organization dedicated to getting more visibility, participation, and accessibility and leadership by the disability community. Oh, and I forgot, I did the slideshow, and I know what's on, pretty much my speech is on the slideshow, so I'm just going to kind of talk around the slideshow because I can't read it. But it is, October is National Pedestrian Safety Month. There is also a whole lot of Blindness Awareness Month. They've got White Cane Day this month. There's a ton of stuff going on in October, but it is National Pedestrian Safety Month. So we wanted to come talk about a little bit about Mobilize Waco and what we're doing and some of the neat things we've had happening. We're a fairly new nonprofit. We got organized last year and did our name change. We're in the middle of our, kind of at the end of our name change right now. And boy, we've just had some great things going on that we've just been thrilled about. So this is our logo, and this is what we're about. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. I think I can almost read it here. Wow. Okay. Some of the challenges we face, and our group we've got wheelchair users that use both electric wheelchairs and manual wheelchairs. We've got white cane users. I have a guide dog. According to Lyft, I'm the only guide dog in the county because they don't know what to do with him. And I have a lot of problems with guide dog refusals with Lyft. But so we have wheelchair users, we have blind people, we have people that are hard of hearing, it just kind of runs the spectrum. And so it's really kind of broadened our focus on what's needed, because a lot of things like, for wheelchair users, they're like, we want it flat. Flat would be great. And the blind people are like, well, wait, we won't know anything where anything is if it's flat. So, there's some challenges trying to figure out what works for everyone. And okay, about these pictures, this is Donna Dill. She's one of our manual wheelchair users. Her husband is an electric wheelchair user. And these two places, I am pretty sure I was supposed to go check it out and I didn't have a chance. These two places are over on University Parks, and I'm on the other side of 35, and I'm pretty sure they're not there anymore. they were real close to the construction that just came along 35 that TxDOT completed, and I'm pretty sure they're gone now. So yay. But it just highlights some of the things that you may not think about, but wheelchair users encountered it all the time. I mean, they just run up on a, even just a 6-inch rise is like, okay, now what do I do? And it's just 6 inches, which is a big deal for most of us. And go on to the next slide. But we're working on getting, we're working with entities and businesses and organizations trying to get more accessibility going. This is Bruce Huff. He's one of our wheelchair users, electric wheelchair users. And this was a project we just did with, and TxDOT was gracious enough to allow us to go check out all of the intersections along 35 and run through them with the wheelchairs and really kind of look at all the details and see how that fits in with us, what our needs are. And we got to have a good conversation about that. And so we're really trying to work within entities and organizations within Waco and McLennan County to make this all better. Next slide. Okay, this is a current project we're doing, and I'm going to plug Biddy and Bose here. If you haven't been to Biddy and Bose, oh my word, please go to Biddy and Bose. That is the happiest coffee shop in Waco, and it is just exciting to be there. It's so much fun, and all of the employees there are disabled. This is this photo is Jimmy Marino. He's the supervisor there. Just phenomenal atmosphere. They all have so much fun. There's usually a karaoke breakout or a dance breakout somewhere during your visit there. They're going to break out and sing. It's a lot of fun. You need to go. But one of the things we were having issues with is their parking lot was not accessible. And it's hard to get into the building when you're in a wheelchair. So some of the employees are in a wheelchair. Some of the customers are in wheelchairs. But the handicap parking spaces were nowhere near the building, some of them were across the building bordering Franklin, and some of them were down at the other end, but they weren't close to the wheelchair ramp. So we were working with the building owners and with the parking lot owner on figuring out how we could make that better. So we're trying to spot things that need fixing and trying to get people together and say, hey, what can we do about fixing this? Go to the next slide. Okay, this is Donna Dill and her husband. And oh, well, there's Fred. I had to put in a cute picture of Fred. Sorry, he has boots. That's for the hot weather pavement, and when it's freezing outside and everybody's putting salt down on the pavement, he can't do salt on his paws because he'll then go and lick his paws, and that causes issues. So he wears boots. He hates them. One of the exciting opportunities that came out of the thing that we did with TxDOT was there were some things that the inspectors had missed. And so we got to have a conversation with the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation about, hey, what can we do about getting the accessible pedestrian signals in a little better shape? And they were like, hey, you guys need to come and be on our work group. So we were invited to be on the work group that's updating the 2012 accessibility standards, the Texas accessibility standards for Department of Licensing and Regulation. Man, I got to say that better. That's a tongue twister. But anyway, so we were super excited. That's kind of my jam. My mentor was on the original committee for, if you know what PROAG is. He was on the committee that kind of started that 30 years ago. So I've gotten to have lots of conversations with him about all of these different rules coming out, all of the regulations. And so that's kind of my jam. So I'm super excited about it, but I'm hoping that it'll have a positive effect on everything else we do. We're happy to get to be in on that. You can go to the next slide. Another thing that's coming up, and I hope you'll all listen for it, is that we had originally talked with KWBU about having like a 3-minute slot, once a month or once a week, once a month, somewhere in there, about Wacoans and McLennan County residents with disabilities. And they liked it so much, they're like, hey, next year in January, we're going to give you a 30-minute time slot once a month to interview people with disabilities here in Waco and here in McLennan County and talk about their issues and things that are going great with them and just interview them and let everybody know how that's going with them. So we were super excited for that opportunity. They were excited, we're excited. That's coming up, I think, in January. Not sure. Go ahead in the next slide. Okay, this is how to get in touch with us. We have a Facebook page. Our website is under construction because we just went through rebranding, but it's there too. And I put my email address if y'all want to contact me or have any questions, anything at all. We love to hear from people. We love to partner with people and work out problems. Or even if you just have questions about Fred, I go around, talk about guide dogs and all sorts of subjects. So I love to answer questions about him. So did y'all have any questions? Anybody? Okay, well, thank y'all for letting me come and talk about Mobilize Waco and National Pedestrian Safety Month. And I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, we would actually like to request that you come and talk to the policy board as well. And so we will not have an update for them for bike and work group. So instead, if you can continue to update them about this, I think.
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, I think the bike ped work group meets November next.
So we have time.
Okay. And one thing about the connected and automated vehicles real quick is I have the opportunity next week to go try out some of the automated vehicles in Austin. So I was like, I want to do that because they don't care if I have a guide dog. So I'm excited. All right.
The radio show is the time and dates and all of that.
We haven't set that up yet, but we will have it on our Facebook page and our website when we do have it set. We will be letting people know. So yeah, we're excited about that. Very excited.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brett. So item number 5 is discussion and updates from the Texas Department of Transportation regarding significant highway construction in Waco Metropolitan.
Jump to the first project here, our Waco Drive project. We're kind of in the closing stages of that job, going through some final adjustments to signals, final inspections with TDLR, and then working with the city on some of the final punch list work there. I'm still on pace to have that one wrapped up by the end of this calendar. This is a smaller project on Waco Drive, an overlay job, primarily between Center Point and Valley Mills. I've actually wrapped up the paving on that job this week, be striping next week, so pretty short duration. Our Spring Valley widening project, again, from Hewitt Drive up to Sun Valley, both of the work is still on the east half of the roadway. Have the majority of the permanent drainage on that half. Probably late October, first part of November, you should see pavement going down, with the traffic switch to follow, and then I complete the west half of the roadway still on target for fall. This State Highway 6 at Baylor Camp Road. This was a small safety widening project at that intersection. We actually started our final paving operations yesterday. Should wrap that up, if not tomorrow or early next week. So another pretty quick in and out project. State Highway 6 mall to mall. Moving to the slide with pictures. This is at the back of the intersection. We've got U-turns open. Actually have all the turn lanes and through lanes open. The permanent configuration here. Moving to the west, here we've got all traffic moved out to the frontage roads. Both of the work continues to be on the main lanes here in the middle, removing pavement, starting on our new permanent pavement structure. Moving to the west at the Beverly Bridges, both the existing bridges with the railroad tracks have been demolished. We are on track to set beams on these two main lane bridges, not the end of October, first part of November. We should see those two bridges taking shape relatively soon. Moving to the west, and probably since the last time we met, we made a switch to get all mainline traffic out on the frontage roads. So continued on removing the existing pavement there in the middle, getting ready to build our newly widened lanes. These are the bridges closest to the 84 intersection. Again, mainline traffic's out on the new frontage roads. Demolition is ongoing with the existing structure over the tracks. Probably late November into December. We'll start to see those new bridges take shape there. Moving closer to the 84 intersection, again on the bottom of the page, you can see the detour back onto the existing main lanes for westbound traffic. Eastbound, we completed the new concrete pavement between 84 and Broad Avenue. So early next week, you should have 2 lanes open on that front road. Clear out some of the backup you're probably seeing at the 84 and 60. Still on target for early next year, substantial completion. This is a new project, I-35 resurfacing job, actually ties into the north limits of our I-35 4B job. Continues up to the north to Business 77. Our contractor has actually completed the vast majority of the northbound side with new pavement. Currently milling off the old asphalt on the southbound side. Paving will continue through October to early November. This is a new project that we're actually starting out this week. So 434 University Parks from LaSalle to through 40. We'll be widening that roadway to construct a continuous left turn lane throughout the entire limits. Mainly just setting project barricades this week. Next week, we'll start performing some pavement repairs along with installing cross drainage structures, with a lot of that work taking place tonight. Roughly a year-long project, so gives you data next calendar. The interstate slowing down is self-stop.
With that, we'll move to item 6, which is work group updates.
We do not have any new work group update. We moved we did not have a bike pedestrian work group meeting in the last one, since we did not have new items to discuss, and we will have quite a few items that we're expecting to discuss at the November meeting. For the citizen participation work group and the announcement, well, that we are going to be meeting on October 18th, and we have the locations that set up, right? It's going to be the main conference room. What time? 10 o'clock, but you will be seeing a formal invitation to that as well. And what is important is that some of the discussion there is also going to then get fed as input into the business process as well. Next. We had elections at the policy board meeting. Councilman Josh Bordred is our new chair of the policy board, and city manager Bo Thomas from Hewitt, he's the vice chair of our policy board. Councilman Jim Holmes, after 2 years, has retired from the chairmanship. He will still be part of the policy board. CRP project, carbon reduction program projects that several of us have submitted. They are moving forward. We had a few more questions related to Beverly Hills project, but the rest of the projects have been forwarded. We do not have any further questions to answer. All the amendments to the MTP, TIP, and UPWP, they have been approved by the policy board, and now it is a matter of uploading them into the electronic STIP, for which the deadline is October 10th. Next. So our next meeting will be November 2nd. Connected automated vehicle meets, work group meets on October 18th at 10 o'clock at the main conference room, the development center. Bike pedestrian group will meet on November 16, 2023. We have not decided on the time and location yet, because we're trying to get close enough so that we have an idea of the weather. And if the weather is cooperating, then of course we would like to do the bike that work group meeting in the Cameron Park, where we prefer to do them. If the weather is not going to cooperate, or if it's going to get cold, then we'll have an indoor meeting. That's all we have.
And that was also item number 7, correct?
That was the item number 7, yes.
All right.
And 8, actually. 6 and 8.
All right, any questions on any of that was discussed? Any requests for future agenda items to be considered for future meetings? It looks like here the next meeting will be November 2nd.
Yes.
All right. With that, if there's no other further discussion, we will adjourn the meeting at 3:08 p.m.
You went over by 2 minutes.
Started that.
It was all me.
And you know, I already stopped me and stuff. I can't. You know, it's slow down.
Did you work?
And you're close to.
Oh, we're gonna have.
One question.
Okay.
Quick.
Yeah.
And